everyone, this is Mr. Imahara. Usually the scariest stories are just fiction, but today I'll prove that reality can be way more terrifying. We've collected 50 creepy facts that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the world. Ready? Then let's dive into a place where death isn't always the end and fear is part of everyday life.
Fact number 1. Have you ever wondered why old family photographs look so creepy? Perhaps it's because one of the people in the photo is already dead. In the 19th century, the practice of post-mortem photography was popular in Europe. Families who lost a loved one, especially a child, wanted to preserve their memory. The deceased was dressed in their best clothes, seated in a chair, or placed next to living relatives using special stands to give them a natural pose. In these pictures, the living look at the camera with sadness, while the dead have an empty, glassy stare forever frozen in time. This wasn't a sign of disrespect, but a desperate attempt to cheat death in at least one photograph.
Fact number 2. What could be scarier than being buried alive? Realizing it in complete darkness underground. In the past, when medicine was not as advanced, people were often buried by mistake, mistaking a lethargic sleep or a coma for death. The fear of being buried alive was so strong that it spawned an entire industry of safety coffins. They were equipped with special systems, a string tied to the deceased's hand which led to a bell on the surface. If the person regained consciousness, they could ring it and call for help. Archaeologists still sometimes find scratch marks on the inside of old coffin lids, a silent testimony of those who were less fortunate.
Fact number 3. Do you think drinking from a cup is mundane? What if that cup was once the head of your enemy? In ancient cultures, from the Scythians to the Vikings, there was a brutal ritual, creating cups from the skulls of defeated enemies. This wasn't just an act of intimidation, but the ultimate symbol of victory and humiliation. After a battle, the skull of an enemy chief or a valiant warrior was shaped into a cup, sometimes even decorated with precious metals. The victors drank from these gruesome vessels at feasts, believing that they were absorbing the strength and courage of the slain. Every sip from such a cup was a reminder that one man's life had ended to become another's trophy.
Fact number 4. Imagine you are sick and the doctor prescribes you medicine made from human bones. This is not fiction, but real medieval medicine. Until the 18th century, so-called medicinal cannibalism flourished in Europe. Doctors and apothecaries believed that parts of the human body possessed powerful healing properties. The skulls of the dead, especially executed criminals, were ground into powder and sold as a remedy for headaches and epilepsy. Human fat was used for ointments and blood was drunk for rejuvenation. It was believed that the more violent a person's death, the more potent their remains. This was an era when the line between healing and nightmare was dangerously blurred.
Fact number 5. What to do with the sick during a deadly epidemic? In medieval Europe, the answer was simple and horrifying. Wall them up alive. During outbreaks of the plague known as the Black Death, panic and fear gripped entire cities. When the disease entered a house, authorities often resorted to an extreme measure, a quarantine from which there was no escape. The doors and windows of the house where the sick were located were boarded up, sometimes even bricked over. Everyone inside was left behind, both those who were already dying and those who were still healthy. They were left without food or help, doomed to a slow death alongside their dead relatives. A red cross was painted on the wall outside, a sign that this house had become a tomb.
Fact number 6. Modern medicine saves lives, but it wasn't always this way. There was a time when a visit to the doctor could kill you faster than the disease itself. For nearly 2,000 years,
From ancient Greece to the late 19th century, bloodletting was one of the most common treatments for almost all illnesses. Doctors believed that diseases were caused by bad blood or an imbalance of fluids in the body. They would cut open patients' veins and drain a significant amount of blood to purify the body. This not only failed to help, but often led to death from weakness, infection, or shock. Even the first U.S. president, George Washington, is believed to have died after doctors drained nearly 4 liters of his blood in 24 hours to treat a sore throat.
Fact number 7. There exists a form of torture so cruel that its victim would beg for a quick death. It is called scaphism, or the boats. This horrifying execution was practiced in ancient Persia. The condemned was stripped naked and tightly bound inside 2 hollowed-out logs or boats with only their head, hands, and feet protruding. They were force-fed milk and honey to induce severe diarrhea, and their body was smeared with honey to attract insects. This cradle was then left in a swamp under the scorching sun. Insects, drawn by the smell, would slowly devour the flesh and lay larvae in the wounds. The victim would die over several weeks from dehydration, septic shock, and unbearable agony.
Fact number 8. Are you afraid of rats? Now imagine being locked in a cage with hungry rodents, and the only way for them to escape is to chew their way through your body. Rat torture is one of the most nightmarish methods of execution, rumored to have been used in various cultures. One of the most famous variations was described in medieval Europe. An open-bottomed cage with hungry rats was placed on the immobilized victim's body, usually on the abdomen. Then, hot coals were placed on top of the cage. Panicked by the heat, the rats would start looking for an escape route. The only soft material they could gnaw through to save themselves from the fire was human flesh. They would literally burrow into the victim's body, causing unimaginable suffering.
Fact number 9. What could be more terrifying than a human sacrifice? A sacrifice in which a person's heart is cut out while they are still conscious. For the ancient Aztecs, human sacrifice was a central part of religious life. They believed that for the sun to rise every day, it needed to be fed with human blood and hearts. During rituals, thousands of captured warriors and volunteers were taken to the top of great pyramids. There, 4 priests would stretch the victim on a stone altar, while a 5th, the high priest, would cut open the chest with a special obsidian knife and tear out the still-beating heart. It was raised to the sun as an offering, and the body was thrown down the pyramid steps.
Fact number 10. History knows many brutal executions, but one stands out for its methodical and horrifying nature: flaying, or skinning alive. This form of execution was practiced in ancient times, particularly in Assyria and medieval Europe. It was considered a punishment for the most severe crimes, such as treason. The executioner, possessing surgical skills, would begin with incisions on the face or legs and slowly, piece by piece, separate the skin from the muscles, trying to keep the victim conscious for as long as possible. The pain was so excruciating that most died from shock long before the process was finished. The flayed skin was then displayed on city walls as a grim warning to everyone else.
Fact number 11. Imagine living in a house under which hundreds of people are buried. In Europe, this is more likely than you think. Europe is a continent with a long and bloody history. Over thousands of years, wars, epidemics, and famines have claimed millions of lives. People were often buried not in official cemeteries, but in mass graves, on battlefields, or right where they died from the plague. Cities grew,
New buildings were constructed, and over time, these forgotten burial sites ended up under the foundations of modern homes, parks, and streets. Statistically, every third house in old European cities has a chance of being built on a former cemetery or mass grave. Your basement might hold secrets much older than the house itself.
Ahead, true terror. Fact number 12. What if you could keep your deceased loved ones at home with you for several weeks? In some cultures, this is not a horror movie, but an ancient tradition. The Toraja people of Indonesia have a unique and, to Westerners, eerie relationship with death. When a person dies, they are not considered dead, but merely sick. The body is embalmed and kept in the house for weeks, months, or sometimes even years. It is treated as if it were alive, brought food and drinks, spoken to, and put to bed. The family saves money for a lavish funeral, which is the main event of their lives. But even after the funeral, the connection is not broken. Every few years, a ritual called manane is held, during which the bodies are exhumed, cleaned, redressed, and paraded through the village as if they have returned to their families once more.
Fact number 13. Your body is not only your home, but a home for trillions of other creatures. And when you die, they don't leave. Immediately after death, when the heart stops, the trillions of intestinal bacteria that helped you your whole life declare war. The body's protective barriers shut down, and they begin a feast, eating you from the inside out. This process, called autolysis, turns your body into their personal ecosystem. They start with the intestines and liver, gradually spreading throughout the organism. It's a grim reminder that even after death, our body continues to live its own, albeit terrifying, life. Inside each of us lives an army that will one day eat us.
Fact number 14. Imagine you're going to sleep, and suddenly a deafening explosion goes off in your head. You're in a panic, but everything around you is silent. This is not a ghost, it's your own brain. This phenomenon is called exploding head syndrome. People who suffer from it hear an extremely loud noise, like a bomb blast, a gunshot, or crashing cymbals, right before falling asleep or upon waking. There is no actual pain, but there is intense fear and anxiety. Scientists still don't know the exact cause of this phenomenon. It is hypothesized to be related to a malfunction in the auditory neurons in the brainstem, which fire all at once instead of shutting down gradually. Your brain is literally short-circuiting on you.
Fact number 15. What if your body started turning to stone and you could do nothing about it? This isn't the myth of Medusa, but a real and terrifying disease. Fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, or Stone Man syndrome, is one of the rarest and most debilitating genetic disorders. With any injury, a bruise, a cut, or even an injection, the damaged muscles, tendons, and ligaments do not heal, but instead turn into bone. Over time, a person's body becomes encased in a second skeleton that locks their joints and imprisons them in a bony shell. People lose the ability to move, speak, and even breathe. It's a cruel irony of nature. The process designed for healing becomes a mechanism for slow and irreversible petrification.
Fact number 16. Have you ever wondered who lives on your face? Right now, as you read this, microscopic arachnid-like creatures are crawling on your skin. They are called demodex, or eyelash mites. These 8-legged creatures, about 0.3 millimeters in size, live in the hair follicles and sebaceous glands of almost every adult human, especially on the face. At night, while you sleep, they crawl out onto the skin's surface to mate, and then return to lay their eggs. They feed on sebum and dead skin cells. In most cases, they are completely harmless, and we live in symbiosis.
but the very thought that your face is an ecosystem for thousands of invisible mites can send a shiver down your spine.
Fact number 17. Death is the end, but not for all bodily processes. Sometimes, the body can do something incredible and eerie, like give birth to a child. This extremely rare phenomenon is called postmortem fetal extrusion, or coffin birth. After a pregnant woman dies, the gases that build up in her abdominal cavity due to decomposition create immense pressure. This pressure can push the fetus out of the mother's body. In history and forensics, there have been documented cases where, upon exhuming the bodies of deceased pregnant women, the remains of an infant were found between their legs. It is a grim and tragic event that blurs the line between the end of one life and the failed beginning of another, reminding us that biology continues its work even after death.
Fact number 18. Imagine feeling, hearing, and being aware of everything that happens during surgery, but being unable to move or make a sound. This is not a dream, but a nightmarish reality for some patients. This condition is called anesthesia awareness. It occurs when the anesthesia doesn't work completely. The paralytic drugs are effective, but the sedatives are not. The patient becomes trapped in their own body. They feel every movement of the scalpel, hear the surgeon's conversations, but their muscles are completely paralyzed and they cannot signal that they are conscious. For those who have experienced it, it is one of the most traumatic psychological tortures, often leaving behind post-traumatic stress disorder. Your mind is wide awake in a body that seems dead.
Fact number 19. Sometimes the scariest things happen when we are most vulnerable, during sleep. For some people, sleep can be their last, for no apparent reason. Sudden, unexplained nocturnal death syndrome, also known as SUNDS, is a real and terrifying phenomenon that primarily affects young, healthy men, most often of Southeast Asian descent. A person goes to sleep and never wakes up. Autopsies show no pathologies or cause of death. The heart simply stops. In some cultures, this phenomenon is attributed to evil spirits or night demons that take the sleeper's soul. Scientists suspect it may be related to a rare genetic disorder affecting the heart's function, but the exact cause remains a mystery.
Fact number 20. Death doesn't always come instantly. Sometimes the body is already dead, but the mind is still here, trapped in a fading consciousness. When the heart stops beating and blood flow to the brain ceases, a person is considered clinically dead. However, studies show that the brain can remain active for several minutes after this. This means a person might be aware that they have died. Patients who have survived cardiac arrest sometimes report hearing doctors pronounce them dead and seeing everything happening around them before their consciousness finally faded. Hearing is one of the last senses to go. You might hear the world saying goodbye to you even after you are already dead.
Fact number 21. The human body is a complex mechanism, but sometimes it fails in the most unpredictable and horrifying ways. For example, by spontaneously combusting. Spontaneous human combustion is a phenomenon where a human body allegedly ignites without an apparent external source of fire. Hundreds of such cases have been documented. Rescuers arrive at the scene to find a pile of ashes and perhaps unburnt extremities, while the surrounding room is almost undamaged. One theory, the wick effect, suggests that a person's clothing acts as a wick and their body fat is fuel, allowing the body to smolder slowly from the inside. But to this day, no theory can fully explain how this process starts or why it is so localized.
Fact number 22. Imagine a virus that can sleep inside you for years without any symptoms, and then suddenly wake up and hand you a death sentence.
This is exactly how the rabies virus works. After being bitten by an infected animal, the virus can remain in the body for an incubation period ranging from a few weeks to several years. During this time, the person feels perfectly healthy. But once the virus reaches the brain and the first symptoms appear, anxiety, hydrophobia, fear of water, hallucinations, there is no turning back. Death occurs in 100% of cases, and it is one of the most agonizing deaths known to medicine. Rabies is a ticking time bomb that could already be inside you, and you wouldn't even know it.
Fact number 23. What if zombies existed in the real world? They do. It's just that their victims aren't humans, but ants. There is a parasitic fungus called Ophiocordyceps that turns ants into actual puppets. When the fungus spores land on an ant, they penetrate its body and begin to control its central nervous system. The infected ant leaves its colony and, like a zombie, climbs a nearby plant to a specific height, which is ideal for the fungus. There, it bites down on a leaf with its mandibles and dies. A few days later, a fruiting body of the fungus grows out of its head, releasing new spores onto unsuspecting ants below. It's a perfect mind control mechanism created by nature itself.
Fact number 24. Have you ever swum in a lake and felt uneasy? Perhaps it's because an invisible killer that targets your brain is lurking in the water. Naegleria fowleri is a microscopic amoeba that lives in warm freshwater bodies. It is called the brain-eating amoeba. If water containing this parasite enters a person's nose, the amoeba can travel along the olfactory nerve directly to the brain. There, it begins to literally devour brain tissue, causing a rare but almost always fatal disease called primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. Symptoms start like a common cold, but quickly progress to a coma and death within a few days. It's one of the most terrifying predators on the planet, one you can't even see.
Fact number 25. The ocean hides creatures that seem like aliens from another planet. Some of them can kill you without even having a brain. Jellyfish are some of the oldest and strangest inhabitants of Earth. They have no brain, heart, or bones. They're just gelatinous organisms made up of 95% water, but don't let their simplicity fool you. For example, the Australian box jellyfish is considered one of the most venomous creatures in the world. Its tentacles are covered with thousands of stinging cells that inject a powerful venom upon contact, attacking the heart and nervous system. The pain from its sting is unbearable, and death can occur in just a few minutes. It is a perfect killing machine that doesn't even have a thought.
Fact number 26. Think you're safe in a river? The Amazon is home to a fish that can swim into your body in the most intimate and painful way possible. The Kindiru, or vampire fish, is a tiny catfish that is perhaps the most feared freshwater creature. It is attracted to the scent of ammonia, which is found in urine. In the water, it can mistake a human for a large fish and attempt to swim into the urethra. Once inside, the Kindiru flares out sharp spines, making its removal nearly impossible without surgery. This causes excruciating pain, bleeding, and infections. It's a nightmare that proves the smallest creatures can be the most dangerous.
Fact number 27. Permafrost is not just ice. It's a giant freezer containing viruses to which humanity has no immunity. The Siberian and Arctic permafrost holds the frozen remains of ancient animals and even humans that have been there for tens of thousands of years. Along with them, ancient microorganisms have also been preserved. With global warming, the permafrost is beginning to thaw, and these prehistoric viruses and bacteria are waking up. Scientists have already found giant viruses over 30,000 years old that became infectious again after being thawed. No one knows what kind of pandemics might be lurking in the ice. Perhaps the next plague won't be new, but very, very old.
Fact number 28. Swamps are not just mire. They are natural archives that can preserve a human body for thousands of years in perfect condition. Thanks to their unique environment, high acidity, low temperature, and lack of oxygen, peat bogs have incredible preservative properties. The bodies of people who ended up in a bog hundreds or thousands of years ago are often found almost intact. Their skin, hair, and even internal organs are so well preserved that scientists can determine their last meal. These bog bodies, as they are called, often have expressions of horror on their faces and signs of violent death on their bodies. They are eerie time capsules that tell stories of ancient rituals and murders. Fact number 29. When you go into the sea, you are never alone. You are literally swimming in a giant cemetery. Every time you enjoy the waves, remember that the ocean is the site of countless tragedies. Throughout human history, millions of people have drowned at sea: sailors, shipwrecked passengers, tsunami victims. Their bones, crushed by pressure and time, settle on the seabed and mix with the sand. The calcium particles from these bones dissolve into the water and become part of the marine ecosystem. Thus, the water you swim in and the sand you walk on literally contain the dust of those consumed by the sea. Fact number 30. Mountains attract the brave, but for some, they become an icy grave from which there is no return. The world's highest peaks, like Everest, are littered with the bodies of climbers who never made it down. In the so-called death zone, above 8,000 meters, there is so little oxygen that the body begins to die. Evacuating a body from such an altitude is nearly impossible and deadly dangerous. Therefore, the deceased remain on the routes, frozen in the positions in which death found them. These ice mummies serve as grim landmarks for other climbers. The most famous of them is Green Boots, a body that lay near the trail for almost 20 years, reminding everyone of the price the mountains can demand. Fact number 31. Mars is called the Red Planet, but its true face is that of a global, suffocating storm that can last for months. Dust storms on Mars are not just wind and sand. They can grow to a planetary scale, completely obscuring the entire surface of the planet for weeks and months. The sky turns a dark red, and sunlight can barely penetrate the dense veil of dust. For future colonists, this is a mortal threat. Such a storm could disable solar panels, clog equipment, and create complete isolation. Imagine being trapped millions of miles from home in a small base, while outside an endless storm rages, plunging an entire world into darkness.
Fact number 32. Imagine a forest so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat. A forest where people come not to walk, but to die. In Japan, at the foot of Mount Fuji, lies Aokigahara Forest, also known as the Suicide Forest. Due to the high density of trees that absorb sound, an eerie, unnatural silence reigns within. For decades, this forest has been one of the most popular places in the world to commit suicide. Every year, volunteers find dozens of bodies here. Signs are posted everywhere with messages like, "Your life is a precious gift. Please think of your family," and helpline numbers. But people still continue to come here to take their final step in the silence among the trees.
Fact number 33. What hides in the 90% of the world's oceans that remain unexplored? The answer could be more terrifying than any fiction. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the ocean floor on our own planet. The deep sea zones are a world of eternal darkness, colossal pressure, and icy cold.
It is there, in conditions that seem impossible for life, that evolution has created the most bizarre and horrifying creatures. Anglerfish with bioluminescent lures, giant squids capable of dragging a boat to the bottom, transparent predators. And that's only what we've seen. No one knows what giant, ancient creatures might be hiding in the deepest trenches, where the light of human technology has yet to penetrate.
Fact number 34. Venice is a city of romance, but it has a dark side. An island so terrifying, it's called the Gates of Hell. Poveglia Island is one of the most haunted places in Italy. In the 14th century, during the plague epidemic, thousands of sick and dying people were brought here and left in mass graves. It is said that the island's soil is 50% human ash. Later, in the 20th century, a psychiatric hospital was opened on the island where the head doctor conducted cruel experiments on patients, including lobotomies. Legend has it that he was driven mad by the ghosts of plague victims and threw himself from the bell tower. Today, the island is abandoned, and visiting it is forbidden. Fishermen are even afraid to approach its shores.
Fact number 35. Beneath the streets of Paris lies a city unknown to tourists, a city of the dead, where the remains of over 6 million people rest. The catacombs of Paris are a network of ancient tunnels and quarries stretching for hundreds of kilometers. In the late 18th century, Paris's cemeteries were overflowing, causing unsanitary conditions. A decision was made to move the remains from the graves underground. Millions of bones and skulls were neatly stacked along the tunnel walls, creating eerie patterns and installations. Today, only a small part of the catacombs is open to tourists. In the vast, unexplored labyrinth, it is easy to get lost forever. There, in the darkness, lie the nameless remains of those who once walked the streets above.
Fact number 36. Space is not just stars. It's a place where the laws of physics create nightmares beyond human imagination. For example, a planet where shards of glass fall from the sky. The exoplanet HD 189733b is a gas giant that looks like a beautiful blue marble. But this beauty is deceptive. The temperature on the planet reaches 1,000 degrees Celsius, and winds blow at speeds of 8,700 kilometers per hour, 7 times the speed of sound. The planet's atmosphere is composed of silicate particles. At such temperatures, they turn into molten glass, and the hurricane-force winds drive a horizontal rain of glass shards across the sky. Anyone who found themselves on this planet would be instantly shredded to pieces and burned alive.
Fact number 37. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people simply vanish. They leave their homes and never return, disappearing without a trace. Around 270,000 people are reported missing worldwide each year. That's the population of an entire city disappearing annually. Some are victims of crime, others of accidents, but the fate of many remains a mystery. They leave no notes, their bank accounts are untouched, and there are no witnesses to their disappearance. They simply drop out of reality. For their families, an endless wait and agonizing uncertainty begin. These people become ghosts whose stories have no end. Fact number 38. It's not just sunken ships that lie at the bottom of the ocean. There are ghost ships, found in perfect condition but without a single soul on board. The phenomenon of ghost ships has haunted seafarers for centuries. The most famous case is the Mary Celeste, found adrift in the Atlantic in 1872. The ship was in excellent condition, the cargo was intact, and the crew's personal belongings were untouched, but the 10 people on board, including the captain and his family, had vanished without a trace.
There were no signs of a struggle or damage. They simply disappeared. There are dozens of similar stories, from fishing schooners to modern yachts found empty in the middle of the ocean. These ships are floating tombs, holding the secret of the sudden and inexplicable disappearance of their crews. Fact number 39. Some people claim they can smell death. And the scariest part is, they smell their own. This isn't mysticism, but a possible medical phenomenon known as terminal lucidity or terminal olfactory perception. Some hospice patients or people before a sudden death have reported a strange, sickly sweet or unpleasant smell that no one else could detect. Doctors speculate that this could be related to metabolic changes in the body before death, as cells begin to die off and release certain chemicals. Imagine perceiving this phantom smell, understanding that it's your body sending you one final farewell warning.
Fact number 40. Dogs are our best friends, but sometimes they see and feel things that are beyond our perception. For example, the approach of death. There are numerous documented stories of dogs that begin to behave strangely hours or days before their owner's death. They might howl for no reason, become restless, refuse to leave the person's side, or conversely, hide. Skeptics say that dogs pick up on subtle changes in the scent or behavior of a sick person. But there are also more mysterious cases where dogs have sensed a sudden death from an accident. Their howl is not just a sound. For some, it is a death knell that only they can hear.
Fact number 41. The desert isn't just sand. In some places, like the Gobi Desert, you can find stones that, according to legends, scream. The so-called singing dunes are a phenomenon where the sand produces an eerie, deep sound, similar to a hum or a moan. This happens when grains of sand rub against each other due to the wind or a person's footsteps. Under certain conditions, the sand begins to vibrate, creating a sound that can be heard from miles. This sound, sometimes resembling a human voice, has given rise to many legends about ghosts lost in the sand. Fact number 42. Your body can become your own prison. Even after death, it can freeze in its final pose for many years. If a human body is in dry and cold conditions, it may not decompose, but mummify instead. In this process, the skin and tissues dry out and harden, preserving the body's shape. There are known cases where mummified bodies were found in a sitting position, for instance, in a chair in an abandoned attic. The person died, and their body simply dried out, retaining its last posture. It is a gruesome sight, not a skeleton, but a desiccated human figure, forever frozen in a mundane pose as if it is about to wake up.
Fact number 43. Is death silence? Not always. Sometimes a dead body can move and make sounds, frightening even experienced pathologists. After death, chemical reactions continue in the body for several hours. Muscles can contract due to residual nerve impulses, causing limbs to twitch. This is part of rigor mortis. Moreover, as bacteria decompose the body, they produce gases. When these gases escape through the respiratory tract, they can pass over the vocal cords, creating sounds that resemble groans, sighs, or wheezes. Imagine the silence of a morgue being broken by a groan from someone who will never speak again.
Fact number 44. Heavy rain can bring more than just floods. Sometimes it brings back to the surface those who were buried long ago. In old or poorly maintained cemeteries, especially those located in low-lying areas, heavy downpours can cause a gruesome phenomenon. The soil erodes, and coffins, which can lose their seal over time and fill with water, literally float to the surface. Sometimes the bodies themselves emerge.
For local residents, this becomes a real nightmare, seeing the coffins of their ancestors rising from the ground. It's a grim reminder that even underground, there is no absolute peace, and nature can return the dead to the world of the living. Fact number 45. Archaeologists don't just find treasures. Sometimes they find evidence that a person's face can be frozen in an eternal scream of terror. During excavations of ancient burial sites and cities like Pompeii, scientists find mummies and skeletons with contorted features and wide-open mouths as if they were screaming at the moment of death. This phenomenon can be caused by various reasons. Sometimes it's the result of death spasms or the rapid drying of tissues that pulls the skin taut. In other cases, it could be evidence of an agonizing death from suffocation, poison, or disease. These screaming mummies are the most powerful testaments to the horror people experienced thousands of years ago, a horror that is forever frozen on their faces. Fact number 46. Blood is a symbol of life, but it can also become an eternal witness to death, being preserved for thousands of years. In permafrost conditions or in dry caves, blood may not decompose, but instead dry up or freeze, preserving its structure at a molecular level. Scientists have found liquid blood in the remains of mammoths that lay in the ice for 40,000 years. Traces of dried blood are found on ancient tools or ritual altars, allowing researchers to determine whether it belonged to a human or an animal. Blood shed thousands of years ago can tell its story today. It is the most resilient and gruesome archive of the past. Fact number 47. Have you ever heard strange noises in your attic? It might not be the wind, but a reminder of ancient and creepy rituals. In many cultures, there was a tradition of sacrificing animals to protect a home from evil spirits. Cats, dogs, or birds were walled up in the foundations or left in attics during construction. It was believed that their spirit would become the eternal guardian of the house. Hundreds of years later, during renovations of old buildings, workers often find these mummified bodies. They have been lying in the darkness for decades and centuries, small, desiccated guardians sacrificed to the superstitions of their owners. Fact number 48. When you swim in cold water, your veins can disappear. This isn't magic, but a protective reaction of the body. When the body is immersed in cold water, the vessels on the skin's surface constrict. This process, called vasoconstriction, helps to reduce heat loss and directs blood to vital organs like the brain and heart. The veins, which are usually visible, become less noticeable. For those unfamiliar with this phenomenon, it can seem as if their own body is mysteriously changing. It's a reminder of how the body fights for survival, even if you are just swimming in a lake. Fact number 49. Imagine finding an old doll and its eyes follow you wherever you go. This is not mysticism, but an effect known as the doll's gaze illusion. Many old dolls were made with spherical or convex glass or ceramic eyes. As a result, when a person moves, light refracts in a specific way, creating the sensation that the doll's eyes are constantly watching you, regardless of the viewing angle. This phenomenon has been deliberately used in some horror movies to create a sense of being haunted. Fact number 50. What if the ground beneath your feet could scream? During archaeological excavations and subway construction in some old cities, like Rome or Istanbul, workers sometimes hear strange, muffled sounds. These sounds, resembling moans or whispers, come from underground. Scientists explain this as the movement of air through ancient underground voids and caverns. The air passing through narrow passages creates low-frequency noises that can produce an eerie resonance. But for those who hear them, these are sounds from the past, the voices of long-dead people who were trapped underground. If you made it to the very end, that means you've got nerves of steel. Let's test it. Type "I'm not afraid" in the comments if you survived all 50 facts. And don't forget to like and subscribe. The scariest stuff is still ahead.